Good morning, everybody. We are live. It's Friday, and you have made it through the week. First off, I wanted to say congratulations. You did a great job this week of managing food safety, quality assurance, making sure that the food supply is safe and wholesome and awesome. And I wanted to let you know that I and Stephanie really appreciate what you've done for us. So thanks a lot for doing that. We appreciate it. Everybody likes good food. So first off, welcome. Pull up a seat. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group. And every Friday at this time, we do an informal food safety chat on a different subject. And I bring an expert in to talk about that subject. And we live stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And what you'll notice here, and this is always the fun part, is this is not a presentation. This is a conversation, and it's meant to be able to share information and get feedback, because food safety is not a point of competition. And we're all working on the same issues. So don't make it harder for yourself. Learn from people and then incorporate those things into what you're doing. So I think part of what makes this format work is not me. I'm just kind of the facilitator. It's the amazing guests that we bring here on the chat. And if you're new to the chat, of course, this is new to you, but if you've been on here before, Stephanie's been here, and when she has been here before in the past, it's always a great conversation. So Stephanie Weinand, I'm with Recall InfoLink. I wanted to welcome you this morning in the US and this afternoon in Germany. How are you?
I'm fine, and thank you very much, Bryan, for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk with you about food safety and share knowledge, exchange ideas, thoughts, innovations. And as you said, it's not a competition, it's a learning process, and we should not shy off to learn from others. So it's a great deal you show, and I really appreciate being part of it today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. People like you make the show what it is. So the last couple of weeks, I was on vacation. It's the first vacation I've taken in years. So it's been kind of a pre-COVID type vacation, because anytime you try to do something fun or go anywhere interesting, that didn't work out. So that was really nice to get away. But I tell you, I missed the chat for sure, and the work with our team, people here like Alexis and Cara. Always good to see them. And as I was thinking about this, so number one, I was in Tasmania, and it's always funny because I was trying to talk my wife into visiting some like dairy companies or something like that. And she's like, "No, we're on vacation." And so Saputo, Bag of Cheese, they have a plant on the north side of the island, and so we drove by that. But I did take some pictures of the cheese plant up there, so I'm gonna have to learn more about that plant. Um, Duncan, you're giving me crap already. Oh, man, okay, calling me a slacker. Hi, Kim. Good to see you as well. So part of what I was thinking about is, food safety, as we talk about, it never stops. And so fortunately for me, I have really good companies that I work with, and the teams on those companies, right, are great. And if you can't hand over the keys of what you're doing to the people you work with and be confident that they can handle anything that comes up while you're gone, you're not doing your job, right? You need to be able to train those people to do that. So if you find yourself on vacation, this is just kind of a little off the cuff tip here for everybody. If you find yourself on vacation and you absolutely believe that everything is going to fall apart and die when you're gone, it's probably not going to happen, right? Yeah, everything will move along just fine without you. So build those things so you don't have to be there, right? Because we all deserve some time off.
And it's part of being a good leader, right? To train your staff, to have colleagues you can trust and rely on, and also be able to take a step back, enjoy your vacation, not think about what could be going wrong. Because, I mean, you train your people, so you should know that they know their stuff and everything will be fine.
Absolutely, 100%. So one of these things that we sometimes do in the chat, we don't really go into great detail. I think this is really relevant for our conversation today, Stephanie. So I wanted to kind of mention this first. Could you tell some of our guests here today what it is your company does and how you help out food companies?
Yeah, sure, of course. So my name's Stephanie, as Bryan said, and I'm the general manager of Recall InfoLink GmbH in Germany. The mother company is Recall InfoLink Inc., based in Boise, Idaho. We offer a service and support companies, no matter whether they are manufacturers, retailers, distributors, to ease and speed up their recall process. So we help them train their staff and do the recall simulations as well as live recalls, and also prepare for audits and have all the files at hand in a digital way, of course, and so be compliant as well. That's what we do in a very short summary.
That's the elevator version, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I definitely wanted to touch on that because it's interesting. We're seeing within this kind of this convergence of these type of activities beyond companies. That's really what we're talking about here today. But before we begin, everyone, please join Stephanie and I.
Yeah.
I bought an espresso this weekend, so I'm playing with my Nespresso. So everybody, cheers!
Cheers.
It makes good coffee. I definitely
Good
like
for
it.
you.
I give it a thumbs up from a quality standpoint. And man, this is great. We've seen some new faces in here, so everybody really glad that you're here. So let's dive into the topic. So yesterday, I was involved with the Trace Gains conference and gave a little Q&A session around traceability and things like that. Kind of funny how these things all come together. And part of that conversation really was what we're talking about here today, Stephanie, around this whole piece of building a recall-ready community. And how do we do this? Because really, I mean, just as a general statement, these days of working in a company and you're the quality control manager or something like this, and you're creating quality systems and doing audits, and you've got kind of this self-contained bubble that you work in, that's gone.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And that's what we have to bring to our minds. And we need to be aware of that. It's not just our own company. It's we need to cover the whole supply chain. And the supply chain is getting longer and longer and more international and global as we speak. So it's, as you said, I mean, I'm pretty sure that when you were in Tasmania, there were a lot of foods or ingredients that you recognized from the US. And so, yeah, it must have happened there somehow. And then you have the transportation, and let's hope everything was cooled in the right way, or just transported in the right way, packed properly, and everything labeled properly. So those topics are of the essence at these days because food travels. So do we. But food travels, and we need to be aware of that, and we need to take that into consideration.
That's a really good point. It's a great observation. So one of my running jokes is I have a friend from Mexico, and when we went to visit him one time, there was a Costco there, and I love Costco. And so I'm like, let's go check out the Costco and see what. And he's like, well, why? I'm like, I don't know. I was kind of because I want to see those different product mixes in the Costco. And so in Melbourne, we visited the Costco in Melbourne, and I took a picture outside and sent it to him. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? But yeah, the really unique foods and these type of things. And to your point, Stephanie, 100% true. There was a product on the Costco shelf. It was kind of like a hummus type dip type product from the US. And I knew the brand, and it was sold here in Colorado. And so I'm like, ooh, neat. So I took a look at it, and yeah, it wasn't holding up very well. It was kind of getting watery, and it had maybe been frozen during transport in the containers or something. But I was like, ooh, okay, I know it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look right as it should from a quality standpoint. The people shopping at that store had no idea, right? That's probably what it normally looked like for them.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be food fraud. I mean, it can just be temperature, stuff like that, or things that were transported in a tanker in a silo and not been properly cleaned before the next ingredients was filled up into that silo. So, I mean, there are so many possibilities how you can contaminate food and
Yeah.
ingredients. So, you better pay attention to that and make sure you have a good product in place and a good tool that helps you at least try to be aware as much as possible and try to prevent that from happening as much as you can.
Right. And so part of this is right as we begin our conversation here is kind of looking at this from the big picture. So every year in, year out, FDA here in the US and other food agencies around the world publish their recalls and the things that happened and the big events and things like this. And pretty much if you follow this for any amount of time, Stephanie, you see a pattern. And it's always the same three. It's allergens, right? It's foreign material, and it's pathogens. So salmonella and listeria. And those numbers stay pretty static. If you look kind of through the history, you see a dip through COVID, and then it's popping right back up now to exactly where it was before that happened.
Mhm.
And it's natural within an industry then to say, well, okay, what are we doing wrong? We should be putting things in place because we're here for continuous improvement and corrective actions, and those numbers should be going down, but they don't. And really that's how GFSI and these other type of programs with the retailers started in the first place, is they said, hey, listen, we need to get these numbers down and we need to put some programs in place and let's do this thing. So they went outside the normal regulatory framework to try and close these gaps. And, this has been ongoing now for quite a while. So if I think kind of the message with this is if we don't do it, somebody's going to come in and make us do it. So it's really our responsibility as an industry to get these numbers down. And how do we do that? And really, it's kind of looking at this overall picture and saying, all right, things have changed relative to our supply chain. And there's a reason why supply chain is a preventive control here for FSMA. The FDA recognizes you need to control your supply chain. And we've been seeing lots of weird international issues here recently, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. And but supply chain, that is a very good topic that you just mentioned. We have new supply chain laws in Europe. In Germany, there's one that started being in place last year, January of 2023, and a European one is just about to be ready and agreed upon. So this is starting to slowly, but hopefully dramatically being in place and then coming into effort, and you see the changes, hopefully. So that is what we're all really working on. And there's one topic that I really like to emphasize a lot on, because I think that's a great example. The baby formula case. I think it was last year when the baby formula it was contaminated in the US, and European companies were trying to help American parents and sent over their formula, but then it got rejected at the borders by the FDA. And I think if we would have had a plan in place or a tool that would have made recalling and contacting and understanding measurements in different languages and different metrics better, it would have been way easier to help you as parents to feed their babies. And I mean, that is just, actually, this should be a no-brainer to support parents to be able to feed their babies. And yeah, I think a system or looking at it from a global standpoint just helps you understand and see the need for something, for a global approach in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And just requires some common sense, right? And so often within bureaucracy and governments, there's not, common sense isn't that common.
not a given.
No, it's like, okay, yeah, we're preventing this from being imported because we're protecting the health of the babies. Well, guess what? If you don't feed the baby, there's not gonna, which is more important in this hierarchy of activities. And part of it is, and this is something that I always make sure that my teams always understand really clearly, is never forget that these regulatory agencies with government are not scientific bodies. They are governmental agencies, just like any other governmental agency. And we all know how government works. And a lot of times they're going to do things which seem contradictory to the overall best interest, because that may not coincide with what they see as their best interest from a political standpoint. So part of those decision makings that take place then is, kind of this, if I make this decision, I could get in trouble, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a really bad way to look at things, but unfortunately, it's kind of the way of the world. So you get these unintended consequences, and then you get reactions from legislative bodies trying to override and change things on the fly, and that doesn't work very well. So how do you deal with those type of things, right? It's very, very challenging. So I think part of this gets into our overall theme with what we're talking about, Stephanie, is you need to have things in place before you need them, not after you need them. So if you find yourself in a recall situation and you don't have good documentation systems and good procedures and training and contacts in the industry, it's going to be a very, very bad experience, because you cannot create those things on the fly. They have to be created and tested in advance. And I think that's what a lot of people.
Yeah, but only train your staff on those tools. I mean, you can have the greatest tool, but if no one knows how to deal with it or how to manage it, I mean, it's the same as having no tool at all. And right. You were absolutely right. I mean, we're in the digital area, and we should be using all the tools that are out there and that are available to the companies. So, having communicating very fast, uploading or using API connectivity, uploading data, uploading information, being able to share really fast and accurate. Those are things that should be no-brainers, and we should use those tools. I mean, they are there. Why not use them, right? And it doesn't matter if you are in the US, in Europe, wherever you are, on which continent. It doesn't really matter, because data travels. It's the World Wide Web. So it's not a big deal. You can inform all of your distributors, your point of sales, whoever you're doing business with. You can inform them real fast. The whole supply chain gets covered using digital tools.
Yep, absolutely. We've been talking this, that we're finally getting to the point now where these things are becoming reality, which is good. So, I mean, really, because part of this is there's kind of two phases to this. There's, in my company, my systems are really good and stuff like that. And that's nice. But really on that supply chain side of thing, you're also relying on the quality systems and control mechanisms for your suppliers. And part of this, I think, Stephanie, is we're coming up with some of these international issues that we've been having recently. And in locals, I have a group when these things come up, I post them there. And as Stephanie had referenced earlier, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as well, is this new German law that's coming into place relative to supply chain. I will put that in locals as well, so you can go and get that there. But you have to keep an eye on these type of issues. So if you're paying attention in the food safety space, right, this huge issue going on with children's applesauce, and it's contaminated with heavy metals. They think there may be other things in it. And now they're thinking it may have been deliberately done. And this is all a result of suppliers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you would not believe that. I mean, who would really do that on purpose? But yes, I know there are mean people out there, or people who want to make money. But let's not go there. I mean, this is to the regular person. This is nothing you can really understand or just get your head around that, because it's just so mean and so terrifying. But yes, if these things happen, absolutely, and we all know that. But the more important it is to be prepared and to know what to do and get the word out fast and make sure that those contaminated products get off the shelves as fast as possible. And yes, Bryan, you're absolutely right. Every company has their own way of doing recalls. They have to. I mean, so in Germany, it's a law, and I guess it's the same in the US. So they have to have something in place. But that usually only is really good within the company, maybe going down to their point of sales, but they never cover their whole supply chain. And as we talked before, the supply chain these days is global. You do not cover, or you don't do anything good if you just have a system that covers your own company internally, but not including the supply chain.
Well, definitely. I mean, so part of the thing is, it's like, does this apply to large companies that buy things internationally, small companies who are only, mom and pop operations? It's both, because like it or not, and you need to really dig into your supply chain to understand this, is everyone is buying international ingredients now. There's no way around it. And the size of your company doesn't really allow that to happen, because what happens a lot of times, and too, Stephanie, is, okay, fine, you don't have enough volume to buy directly from the spice supplier in India for whatever you need. So you're buying through a broker or a distributor. Well, they're not the manufacturer. You need to go back directly to that manufacturer. And you really need to dig on these type of things, because they're not necessarily going to be forthcoming about this. So you may get the information from the broker or distributor, and it's presented in a way where it looks like they're manufacturing and things like that. You need to be 100% sure and say, I need to approve you as a broker for our company, but I also need to approve the manufacturing food safety plans and programs for the company you're purchasing from and the exact factory. And if they have multiple factories that you can source from, I need to understand that as well. So you may think as a small company, you're protected and say, oh no, I buy these 5 different things from this broker and I've approved them. No, you cannot do that. You got to go back to those manufacturing locations. And sometimes you'll get pushback, because they don't necessarily want to tell you those type of things. And so hopefully that's over, right? But I still come across brokers now that still have that mindset that they can somehow hide that information. It's like, oh, well, you'll just go buy from them directly. It's like, dude, no, this isn't how this works. How long have you been in food, right?
And that's exactly what the German supply chain law is about. You need to be able, once an auditor comes to your company, you need to be able to show them and prove to them that you have done your research all the way down to the farmer, all the way down to the people on the field, putting the seed in the soil and making sure whatever you're getting grows and how it grows. And a huge topic, this is not what we're talking about right now, but a huge topic is child labor, sustainability, stuff like that. But also, of course, that the food is not contaminated with anything. I mean, just think about the romaine lettuce and the water that was running through the fields. On the one side, there were all the cows contaminating the water, and on the other side, the salad was kind of watered with that water, and so the contamination happened, and it was spread out all over the U.S. And I think it even got to Europe, and that's how food travels. And this is not just the salad itself. I mean, it got put on burgers, it got put in salads, it was sold in restaurants. So there was no way of not being in touch somehow with contaminated salad if you ate it. But if you're into salads, I mean, but still, I mean, it was easily for consumers to be exposed to that contaminated food.
Right, and it's too big of a topic to cover on this call, but it's exactly what enhanced traceability is meant to address with FDA, right? Is that quick ability to go backwards through the supply chain to the manufacturer with the key data that they can then begin their investigation quickly, because that's been a huge source of frustration for FDA. And I wanted to make sure that I had this out there in people's minds, because we need to be working on this now. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of activity out there. So I'm going to be pushing this more this year as well, because the guidance was published, the comments have gone through, it's been completed, it's done, and it is effective January 26th. And that's not very far away to develop a backwards focused recall system for enhanced traceability for high risk foods within an industry. How does that even work, right? So there's not a lot of discussion out there. So more to come on that topic as well, for sure. So you may think that your one forward, one back traceability within your company is good enough. No, not even close anymore.
And sometimes we keep forgetting that in the end, we're all consumers. So we're doing this for ourselves, for our families, for our friends. It's not for some unknown anonymous person out there somewhere. It's it can have an impact on our families directly. And so I think we should remind ourselves about that and not forget about it.
Yeah. So within what we do in food safety and quality assurance, right, we're one of those groups that's out there scanning the horizon and looking for the new threats, new things are going on, right? So just having the program for supplier approval and management and traceability is nice, but you need to see what's coming down the pike. So like we were talking about some examples relative to, so the baby food that we talked about as well, the Daily Harvest Terra flour issue that was traced back to Peru through the efforts of Bill Marler to figure out what the heck was causing these issues in people's livers. Enoki mushrooms. Oh my goodness, right? I see recalls all the time for enoki mushrooms from China with listeria. And a lot of times these things are eaten raw. So part of this, and why I'm bringing these concrete examples up, is you need to file these away so that if it doesn't directly impact your company or the companies that supply your company, is somebody in marketing thinking about it? Has R&D been playing around with some of these ingredients in products and they're unaware of the risk? So part of this, right, is being the spokesman within the organization who's keeping an eye on these type of issues, and then really understanding what type of buckets these type of things fall into for risk. So spices, right? Spices can be very risky. Now, risk will also vary depending upon whole or ground, right? So if you're buying a ground spice at your company, it's going to be riskier because someone could sneak something in there that you don't know about. We all remember the issue with cumin and peanut shells, where someone had done that to cut the product. You need to understand that. And supply chains with spice, and I think companies in the US like McCormick and others, spice suppliers around the world, have done a fantastic job of unraveling a really complex supply chain. So that's an advantage of working with companies like that to make sure that you've got these things going. But on the marketing side as well, you need to be thinking about what are they up to relative to packaging on products too. So for example, if the marketing group wants to produce a vanilla product and they want to put fancy language on the label that says single sourced from family owned farms in Madagascar, right? And they have all this promotional material and they're showing, the farms in Madagascar and they're very pretty and all these type of things. Okay, great. What happens if that supply is no longer available? Now you're in trouble. Right? Now you cannot source.
Yeah.
Yeah, big problem. So the farther you delve down into that specificity, the more it can impact your supply chain. And you think, okay, how does that impact me from a food safety standpoint? Well, you now may be forced to approving those companies because that's the only thing there is.
Yeah.
Now you're in
Yeah.
a really, really hard spot. So you're like, okay, well, they have problems. I can work with them, but I'm going to have to spend a lot of time improving this supplier because I have no other options. Now you
Yeah.
just shoot up a huge part of the time your team needs to do these things when other stuff needs to be done, and I'm talking about this really because this is, again, important piece of what food safety professionals need to do is you need to think outside of your box and just meeting the requirements of the audit. As the leader in that group, you need to be looking out ahead of that and saying
Yeah.
what problems are coming that I can potentially stop before they become a problem.
Yeah. And besides that, Bryan, a lot of things are also cultural in a way. I mean, thinking about the French raw cheese, this is something you could not. So I talked to French people and they told me you could not take away raw cheese from us. This is just part of our culture. And that's understandable. But we always see those recalls on raw cheese from
Yeah.
France. So this is, yeah, another one of those recurring events. But I don't think we'll ever be able to stop that from happening because
No.
that's yeah, just how it is.
Well, and this is also something that's very interesting relative to speed to market or things like this. And you have to be careful of these contexts. So what do I mean by that? So a farmer at a raw milk farm, takes a sample of milk from the raw bulk tank. Is he going to get sick? Well, maybe, right? Hard to tell. They've been doing it their whole lives, but the initial count may be low in that tank. Is it a risk? 100% of the time, yes. People extrapolate that information and say, "Oh, raw milk is safe." No, raw milk is not safe. And
Yeah.
with raw milk cheeses and things like this in France, part of this is also the speed to market because a lot of times when they're manufacturing these raw cheeses, they're being made and then sold and consumed the next day, right? France has a very close market where these things are getting out there very, very quickly, which also helps with risk. The soft ripened cheeses like brie or things like this, for example, in the US, are very different in formulation than the cheeses of France because the market cycle is so much longer, right? We've got this huge country to cover, so they have to
Yeah.
modify it to make sure that it doesn't get too mushy or go out of shelf life before code. So everything is different, and you have to consider those contexts.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is very important. And
Yeah.
also, I think the less processed food you're buying, I mean, like washed and cut salad, for
Mm.
examples, or cut and sliced melons, like the cantaloupe melons.
Oh.
If you buy the whole thing and cut it yourself, I mean, it's not a lot of work, but it helps you prevent from, eating or consuming contaminated food. Because, once or as long as it's still a fruit, one piece, it's protected by the outside of it. But if you sell it or if you buy it once it's cut into pieces, oh my God! I mean, we all know what can happen to that food. Yeah.
That's a really good point. And yeah, I never buy pre-cut fruits like that. No, don't do that. Let's see. So we had a question here from Musa. Thank you very much. Let's pull this up here. So he asked, what work is being done to help with the visibility of the depth of investigations available to consumers? Interesting question. I'm not quite sure of the context here. What are you thinking, Stephanie? What's Musa looking for here?
Well, thanks for asking that, because
Yeah.
yeah, I am having the same problems. Um,
So here's how I'm interpreting it. And if I'm incorrect here, please clarify in the comments and we'll readdress. But what is being done with the visibility of the depth of investigation for consumers? So let's say, let's go back to your infant formula. And, there was a problem at the infant formula plant. What type of information is available to consumers to let them know about those issues?
oh, okay. Yeah, that will make a ton of sense. Um, Well, so I know how consumers are being informed in Germany, because we have, like, it's from the from authorities. They have a website, and you can go there and check out the latest recalls, for example, and it exactly tells you which state is affected. Gives you the lot numbers. There's a picture. It's a very detailed description of what has been going on, what is wrong, what can happen to you. Um, the thing is, however, not everyone knows about that website.
Right.
So people go to a shop, and then you have, again, in Germany, you have those tiny little pieces of paper which are not highlighting anything. It's not in color. It's usually black and white, and it just tells you, well, yeah, this is being recalled, blah blah. And people don't read that. I mean, when I'm in a hurry grocery shopping, I don't look at any paper hanging around on
Oh,
the shelf, because sometimes it's just like 2 for 1, and I don't really care about that. So it's easily ignored by consumers when they're shopping, and that,
no, 100%. And as consumers, we just assume our food is safe. Why would it be here if it wasn't safe?
right.
And that's just kind of the general thought process for a consumer. And yeah, no, I mean that billboard system in retailers and things like that with notices, and that's from 50 years ago, right? And it hasn't changed. Um,
Yeah.
Part of this, I think, is twofold. So hopefully this helps answer the question, Musa, is companies that are proactive. So for example, we have all these shopper programs where you get discounts and what have you at Aldi or Costco or things of this nature. And they track our purchases, right? They're not doing that for altruistic reasons. They want to know our buying habits and use it to market and things like this. But Costco, for example, here in the US, uses that information for recalls.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if, for your example, romaine lettuce, if there's a recall
Yeah.
and I bought that, they actually have those records and they will notify me. They'll send me an email and say, hey, this product, bring it back to the store. It's bad. We'll get you a new one. So Costco is very proactive in that. And I'm very grateful for that system that they set up. And as a
Yeah.
consumer, I know that Costco is protecting me, right? And
Yeah.
I think it kind of gets back to the enhanced traceability thing too, is
Right.
looking at it from that side.
And post COVID is so important, because more and more people buy even groceries online at Amazon, for example, and they have all your data, and they send out information as well. If you purchase something that was afterwards be needed to be recalled. So yeah, that is something I would say everyone selling groceries online has to be aware of, and has to have a solution to inform their consumers um, about the product that they had purchased.
Yeah.
And I mean, how often, or putting it differently, it very often happens that cashiers are not completely informed, and that you're in a grocery store, and you would
Yeah.
expect a cashier to know if a product has been recalled, and you would expect, you put it on the you put it out there, and you wanted to pay, and then you expect the cashier to tell you, well, no, I cannot sell you this because it's been recalled.
Yeah.
But it often happens that they don't know themselves, and so yeah, this should be actually the last point of control for your safety,
Yeah.
but it often isn't. And so yeah, using those apps, I mean, just like you, we have apps from the retail shops, and yeah, they use the data just as you, Bryan, just described. They use your data, they send out information, and that is a big help.
Yeah. Now here's an idea, and Duncan, this one's, pay attention to this one. So imagine this in the future, an AI that tracks this for you. So you set up with your AI system, hey AI, I would like you to cross-reference going forward all of my online purchases of food with any existing recalls for those foods and let me know if it happens. Would be cool.
Interesting. That would be cool. But yeah, not everyone is using AI yet. And that, specifically those of us or the elderly and the very young ones. I mean, of course, they don't go shopping themselves, but elderly people, they probably, at least here, are not using AI. And they are the ones that are most likely to have a severe health issue after having eaten contaminated food. So the most vulnerable would not be open to your solution, Bryan. So I think we'll have to come up with something different.
So what you could do is say, hey, AI, come up with this list, print it out, and have someone post it on the bulletin board outside.
At least, yeah. And highlight stuff, make it a little bit more appealing to read, not just black and white.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, another thing, and we're all very aware of this right now, that can really mess up your supply chain are market disruptions. So wars, right? We have all these different issues going on around the world right now. We don't factor those into our systems. A lot of times we don't have backup suppliers and we're caught. So a perfect example of this for me is, and I didn't know this until the Ukraine war happened, but almost all of the sunflower oil in the world comes from Ukraine.
Yeah.
So if you're buying from there and then the war started and that supply is cut off, you're in big trouble. What do? Now you have no sources. And now all of a sudden procurement is scrambling, trying to find an alternate source for sunflower oil. R&D is trying to figure out if there are other different type of oils that are going to work in your formula for your product. That takes a long time. And R&D, is working with procurement. Procurement goes out there and they find some oil from this guy. It's like, hey, I got some oil for you, right? And the price is suspiciously cheap, and it's available all of a sudden, right? Your food safety ears should be going pshoo, right up right away because there's something wrong. And
but people are desperate, right? They need replacements.
And this is prime territory, as we talked about a little earlier, Stephanie, food fraud, right? Now, all of a sudden, you've got somebody trying to sell you sunflower oil, and it's not even sunflower oil. They're just pretending it is. And you have no idea about that. And a lot of times people will say, well, I'll get a pre-shipment sample for that to make sure it's okay. Well, you're assuming that a potentially dishonest supplier is actually going to send you a real sample. Or are they going to send you a really nice, pretty sample from something else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are so many possibilities to commit food fraud or, just make money out of people's needs. And but I'm afraid we're not going to change the world. We'll just have to make sure we do whatever we can to protect consumers and make sure that food is as safe as we can, at least take our part in it and work on that. I'm not sure if you saw that on LinkedIn, Bryan, but there was a sketch of Darren Detweiler as a superhero.
Yeah, I did see that.
And that is correct. We're not like superheroes in the Marvel sense, but it is an heroic thing to do, to fight for food safety every day in our daily business. That takes a lot, and a lot of awareness, a lot of strength, and a lot of faith and power to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a lot of times, as we talk about here on the chat too, is no thanks, right? People just assume it happens and that it's just magic. And we know that it's not, which is why I always start the chats out with thanking the people that do this, because we don't hear that often. People just assume it happens. And it's a lot of work behind the scenes to make this happen. And kind of what we're talking about in the chat today is being proactive and going out there and looking for issues. Right? We have to address the things we already know, but we also have to go out there and figure out things we don't know.
Yeah, that's the most challenging part. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just be aware and be aware of what's going on, not just in your state, your country, but around the world. Make sure you are aware of new laws, new regulations, or new challenges. As you said, the Ukraine war, in general, have an open mind and not just focus on your very close environment. That is not getting you anywhere.
Yep. And you have to understand your supply chain, as we've been emphasizing on this call here today.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
our supply chains are exceptionally complex, and they change all the time, and it's very much industry specific. So if you work in, as we were talking about, produce and romaine and things like that, man, the clock is ticking once you harvest that product, and you need to get it to market very, very quickly, which means conversely that you need to have exceptionally good systems, right? So the faster your system operates, the better your system needs to be,
Yeah.
so that you can react to changes and track and manage on the fly, and everybody in that process knows what their roles are. And once it's picked in the field, what segments of the field, how do we label it? Is this something that gets washed or not? How do we know that the rinses are good? What's the destination? All of that needs to be understood. And if you're just that one piece in that process, is, oh no, I'm just the guy who receives in the produce and washes it off. That's all I care about. As we're emphasizing on our chat here today, that's a absolutely completely wrong way to look at it. And if you continue looking at it that way, you're in for a lot of work and
Yeah.
surprises.
And you need to take all that information and transfer it into usable data, because that's also very important to have standardized data to make communication easy. I mean, it's no use sending out information and the recipient does not understand what you're talking about. So having a system that makes sure that the data is standardized and easy to understand and has all the right information and accurate, it's just that's what you need, because you want to act fast and you want to receive the right. You don't want to call someone up and say, sorry, I didn't really understand. What were you talking about? What exactly happened here? That just takes too much time. And you really want to get the information and act upon it and be done and have taken the product off the shelf.
Exactly. And I think in the long run, this will help as well at the retail side of things, having this better lot code, enhanced traceability back to manufacturers, because the retailers are in a bad spot too. And I had a conversation one time with the head of food safety for Kroger here in the U.S., right? Huge grocery chain. And he has since retired from that role and does his own consulting work, and he's a fantastic person. He said, listen, Bryan, I get 300 recalls a year in my company. I don't have time to parse that data, right? I'm hitting a button and sending people out to remove that product from the shelf. So you can't come to me and say, oh, yes, it's this SKU, but it's only this lot code and it's only product from this line. And it's all, no, it's all coming off the shelf, because we're dealing with 18-year-old kids working in the back of the grocery store. They don't have the ability to segment that correctly most times. So we take a shotgun approach and recall everything. So it's to everyone's advantage to be able to limit that within our systems as much as possible.
Right. But then on the other hand, don't you think it's also a matter of training people properly? I mean, of course, I have 3 kids, so I know how 18-year-old think or behave or don't. So I know that that's a challenge, but I think it's very important to also train them properly, even if it's just a vacation job or a part-time job during school. That doesn't really matter. I think everyone working in the food industry, in the overall food industry, needs to have a proper training and needs to have an understanding of why their job matters. And I think that is a huge topic that is often forgotten. Of course, every average 18-year-old would just go like, okay, now I have another hour. Okay, I just take it all out, or I'm ignoring this, or really? That's what 18-year-olds do? No, I know. Exactly. Just be on the phone, ignoring everything else. But if they understood why their jobs matter, if they get the right feedback, the right training, the right support, they could do a job as good as a 40-year-old and protect consumers just as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure Austin right now is perking up as well. I mean, so the design of that training is super important. And so part of this is recognizing your audience. And am I going to get the attention of an 18-year-old kid at retail sitting in front of a PowerPoint? No. Right?
No,
They don't even know what PowerPoints are. Yeah. So what's the right type of training to develop for that role? And how can I very quickly teach them what they need to know and make sure that it hits them right, right in the brain and goes right in there.
Yeah.
So part of this, and this is how I approach these type of activities. This applies to documentation, to everything relative to this. Is it's very helpful, Stephanie, to think of documentation and processes like this in kind of three buckets. Is the first is operational data, and we'll kind of keep this on this retail example. So operational data may be something that the store manager needs. He needs to know the number of staff that are working, the sales per hour, turnover and velocity of particular products, whatever it is that he needs to run the store operationally. From a food safety quality standpoint, that's fine. Take care of that. We don't really mind. The next piece is food quality. So in the retail side, it may be damaged packages on shelf, or things that don't look very nice, or they're not being rotated correctly, or they need to dust, or whatever, right? Things that the consumer expects of that store and the food that they're presenting within there. That third bucket is food safety, right? So the temperature in the refrigerated areas of the facility, the making sure that expired products are removed from shelf, these type of things, right? And my advice on that, and I don't work in retail, but is my primary objective in this role is food safety. I'm not going to put any other information in this training when I sit down with these kids. I'm going to talk with them strictly about food safety and how they protect people by doing these 5 things that they have to do every day or whatever it is, right? And now I'm zeroing in on that objective and hopefully getting their attention. So work your programs and your systems, and Austin's laughing, with that endpoint in mind. What do I want to do? I want to protect food safety. Okay, what do I need to teach these people that they absolutely understand so that food safety is protected? Everything else is secondary.
Absolutely. And to the data, again, we have so many digital solutions that help you with that, but the general data, I mean, these days you can have your connectivity with, different tools, and there are so many things out there that make your life easier. And that is you just have to look around and find what's most suitable for your needs and for your company's needs. So yeah, focus on training people. And I think that is also, again, coming back to the global approach, that is the same everywhere. I mean, you have to train your people, whether you're in the US, in Europe, I don't know, in Africa, it's always the same thing. And it comes down to people caring for others and knowing the worth of their work and the importance. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of being this big community, right, is the analogy I always use, right, is you need to come out of that trench. You need to start looking around at the overall scenery and not just worrying about your own stuff, because this is all interconnected. And this is really the theme of what we've been talking about today, right? So it's supply chain, it's the people you supply, it's the people that supply you, it's thinking about the consumer. What are those emerging risks that are coming out there in the world market that you need to understand? And guess what? That makes you more valuable as a team member within that company too, because you're able to talk to things outside of these. So if you see something going out there that worries you, you can go and talk with the procurement group and say, hey, be extra careful if you're looking out there for spices in this area of the world. They're having some issues.
And that's another use for your AI, because you can get all that information and you can kind of, what's the word? I'm sorry. Predict. You can predict things happening. You have algorithms that help you figure out which spice or which other ingredient is most likely to cause a recall. And there are so many companies out there who do those kind of work for you using their AI. So that is a great tool, in my opinion, also to support the work you're doing.
Yeah. And you and Neil are thinking along the same threads here, right? So good to see, Neil. The tools are getting so good at collecting information, but there's a lack of review. Hopefully we can start using AI to filter, right? So This is it's a good observation. This is a common problem, right? There's data and then there's information, right? So yeah, we're very good at collecting mountains of data, but how do we use that information to manage and react to issues? Sorting through all of that is really, really important. And that's something else that a good food safety quality manager needs to understand too, is everybody doesn't need all the detail, right? Understand your audience that you're talking to and present it that way so that they understand it as well. So if you can present it to a non-technical person and they understand why this is important, you understand it as well. So that's always a good test.
Yeah. Well, I at least know two companies that are out there who do a great job in filtering data to your specific company's needs, depending on what you are producing or what you're selling. So, I mean, there is a lot out there. If you don't find anyone, come back to me. I'll provide information. I'm not promoting anyone here right now, but just, you can reach out anytime. I can help you there. And I think, again, tools need to be used, otherwise they're useless. And there are so many out there, and we should not shy back because we might be afraid of we're not technical enough. I don't know, but we are, and there are filters, and there are always people to support us. It's not that difficult. So
yep.
we should use
it. Yeah, Stephanie's super active on LinkedIn. I see posts all the time, and like we saw over here, right, email right over there. So send us an email. We're more than happy to answer your questions. We've been talking about this in different segments of our chat here today, but I wanted to bring it out specifically, is regulatory changes. Right? There are things that can really, really surprise you if you're not paying attention. And a lot of times people will get mixed up and think, oh no, well, we have a regulatory person in the company and they're dealing with that. Well, maybe, but a lot of times regulatory groups within companies, if you're big enough to have one, are dealing with more marketing or labeling type issues. So they're making sure that the nutritional claims are correct on the packaging and net weight statements and the principal display panel and all those rules that you have in the US and other different markets on what you can put on a label. That's generally their focus. They're not out there necessarily looking for what we're looking for. So as we had referenced, with the infant formula and different rules around that, there's new regulations coming in California, the Baby Food Act out in California, which is going to put new California requirements for testing of products marketed to children like that under one, I believe, and stringent heavy metal testings and things like this, as we've seen with Prop 65 in the past. But now you also have to post those results on a public website, and you have to test every month.
Oh.
Yeah, if you don't know that's coming, and all of a sudden it hits, and your products are being pulled from shelves in California for non-conformance, yeah, you're in a lot of trouble.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that, but yeah, that can take you out of business real fast.
Yeah, if you are in the U.S. market or European markets and you're selling in Canada, there's been a lot of work there for the Canadian safe food, kind of their harmonization activities. And if you're bringing materials into the country, there may be things now that are being triggered coming up here in February that you need to comply with. So if you're not aware of that, you need to check that out as well. I haven't heard anything on that with the marketplace here in the U.S. Is Canada going to, stop importations at the border if companies are non-compliant? That's something you don't want to find out, right? Because if you have a Canadian facility and it's waiting for materials and you shut it down, you need to keep a track of that.
Oh, I have something to add to that as well. I mean, it's not just those regulations, but if you want to do business in Europe, you have to be aware of GDPR, and that is that is a lot of fun. So you really have to be sure you're following the rules, because otherwise you are in big trouble. That has nothing to do with food itself. I'm just saying there are so many other things next to food and ingredients and laws and everything that, I mean, as great as it is to be global and have access to everything from everywhere, there are a lot of things you need to be aware of, and you have to have a very open mind, not to run into any problems or challenges on your way.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were referencing here earlier as well, this new German supply chain, the due diligence law and everything associated with this. And this really kind of gets to our overall theme where these things are all coming together, Stephanie, in that all of these systems for food safety and worker safety and human trafficking and sustainability and recyclability and all of these things they're all coming together.
Mm-hmm. We even have a reusable cup law. So you have to have reusable cups when you go, like if you go to Starbucks or wherever you purchase your coffee to go or your tea to go, whatever it is, you have to have a reusable cup. You have to use that. And so, these are things, if you don't know them, you might run into problems.
Right, definitely. So we'll kind of bring this back to the 30,000 foot level as we kind of close out here, because really the overall, we've been kind of doing what you need to do when you're evaluating issues. You start at a principle, you pull out particular concretes associated with those, and then you kind of go back up and say, how do we interact and how do we apply all of this information? Because if you just stay in one of those two realms, you're not going to succeed, right? If you're down in the details all the time, you're going to miss the big stuff. But if you're just tracking the big stuff and you never do anything to execute against that moving forward, you're going to be in trouble too. So you need to look at these things. So number one, so you need to know your supply chain, right?
Yes. Most important. All the way down to the fields, to the farmer, all the way down. Yeah.
Right. And supply chains are not static. They are constantly changing. So in the world right now, right, we're going through, there's a lot of inflation relative to food products and things like this, and we see how companies are reacting. So companies are trying to find, more cost-efficient sources of suppliers and raw materials. They're changing finished product packaging, right? So shrinkflation is a term we have here in the U.S., where companies will make a product smaller and sell it for the same price to try and get through those inflationary. And that makes consumers mad when they notice that.
Understandably so.
Yeah, and what are these different tactics that are out there within your supply chain, and what are the issues, and how are people reacting? Because if your company is reacting, guess what? Everybody else is too. So what potential steps could they be taking that could impact your company as well? Find best practices. Right? What are these different buckets? And this is exactly what we've been talking about here today. And number one, right, this is a good way to find out best practices, talking and listening to experts like Stephanie in these areas, and of course our great experts in our audience, and figuring out, right, and realizing that you're never done relative to these things, right?
Yeah. Things are changing, and you can never be sure you're on top with your knowledge and with what you're doing. So better make sure to look twice and do some more research to make sure everything's in order and you're not running into challenges.
Right. And we didn't touch on this, but it needs to be mentioned at least, is if you're a manufacturer, odds are, small or big, depending on the different particulars of your circumstance, you're going to be using contracted manufacturing in your operations. If you're small, you don't have a facility yet, and you need to work with other people. If you're large, you need to work with other companies who may have specific capacities that you don't have. Either way, someone else now has a say in supplier management. You could be buying supplies through them, or you could be supplying your own materials and making sure that they're managing that correctly. So that's another layer of complexity for supply chain. You need to make sure and address and have visibility into that.
And that's so difficult. I mean, often you don't even know that the company you're buying from has others, like sub companies that they're getting at least ingredients for their product from. And then you would expect it to all be from that one company. And so you think, well, yeah, I'm good to go because I know that they're safe, they're following all the rules. But then you eventually find out, well, oh, there are other different companies involved in this process. And first of all, figuring that out, and then being able to get the information you need, because they say, well, we're not doing business with you directly. Why should I share my information and my data with you? And that is just, it is so complicated. And yet you have to do it. It's just, part of your role.
Right. And so, to kind of summarize this then, in my view, right, it is we need to be in that proactive realm as much as possible. So in those type of scenarios, have conversations, with your co-mans. Have conversations with the procurement group. And as Neil wisely points out here, talk with these other groups within your company, which is really kind of the theme of our chat here today. Get out of your food safety quality bubble and work upstream. Work with R&D, work with procurement, work with the marketing group so you understand what the objectives are going to be for the next 1 or 2 years so that you're not surprised, right? We hear this a lot in food safety quality assurance is, oh, why didn't anybody tell me about this? Oh, why didn't you go out and find for yourself, right? Don't rely on other people for your success, right? Build as much of your own proactivity into this as you can and get out there, because now you understand coming out of this chat that you need to expand within your company, within your community, within your networks of how can I better manage my supply chain backwards from retail for enhanced traceability, all these other things, so that I can look at this holistically and build that into my quality systems. And then you'll succeed.
Yeah, and it's on us. No, as you said, Bryan, absolutely right. No one's going to bring information to us. It's on us to do research, to reach out to other people, get the information, and no one is going to help us there. It's our task, and we need to do that. That's all there is to it.
That's why they're paying us. So
exactly.
So with that, we'll bring our chat to a close here today. Time went really, really fast. Fantastic engagement, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love it when we get lots of good back and forth and questions on the chat. I really appreciate it, and everything that you guys are doing out there and improving your knowledge and our knowledge on these subjects as well. So on behalf of Stephanie and myself, I wanted to thank everybody for attending the chat here this week. I know, an hour is a lot of time and it's a big investment, and it shows your commitment to food safety. So thanks for that. So with that, we'll see you back here next week at the same time. So Fridays on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. On the East Coast. And if you're in Germany, a little later in the afternoon, perhaps.
4 p.m.
But true. And we'll bring on this next amazing expert to talk about a food safety subject. So in the meantime, everybody enjoy your weekend. Have a great time and know that you've done a great job, and we'll do it all again next week. So thanks a lot. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you. And thanks for having me, Bryan.
Oh, you're very welcome.